What if your dog could save your life when no one else noticed you were in danger? Every year, thousands of people are misdiagnosed in hospitals, but one remarkable K9 unit proved that sometimes animal instincts are more powerful than medical technology. Today, I'm taking you inside the incredible true story of Rex, the police dog who detected what doctors couldn't, a deadly conspiracy hiding in plain sight at one of New York's busiest hospitals. Hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The fluorescent lights of New York Presbyterian Hospital cast a harsh glow across the sterile corridor of the intensive care unit. Ryan Hayes, a broad-shouldered NYPD K9 officer with deep-set blue eyes and 3 days' worth of stubble, sat hunched forward in an uncomfortable plastic chair outside room 412. His calloused fingers idly stroked the thick fur of Rex, his 5-year-old German Shepherd partner, whose alert brown eyes never left his handler's face. Margaret Hayes, Ryan's 72-year-old mother, lay behind the door, connected to a labyrinth of tubes and monitors after collapsing in her Queens apartment 2 days earlier. The doctors had mentioned words like stroke and respiratory distress, but nothing conclusive yet. Officer Hayes, a nurse with kind eyes and graying hair, approached. Your mother's vital signs are stabilizing. Dr. Turner will be making his rounds soon. Ryan nodded, the tension in his shoulders barely easing. Thanks, Nurse Chin. I appreciate it. As if on cue, a tall man in a white coat rounded the corner, flipping through a chart. Dr. Samuel Turner appeared to be in his mid-40s, with wire-rimmed glasses and perfectly combed salt and pepper hair. Mr. Hayes, he said with a polite nod. I'd like to check on your mother now. As Turner reached for the door handle, Rex's demeanor changed instantly. The shepherd's ears flattened against his skull, his hackles rose, and a low, threatening growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Rex, heel, Ryan commanded sharply, surprised by his partner's sudden aggression. In 3 years working together, he'd never seen Rex react this way to medical personnel. Dr. Turner took a step back, his expression a mixture of surprise and irritation. Perhaps your dog should wait elsewhere? Hospital policy generally doesn't allow. He's a police K9, Ryan interrupted, a protective edge in his voice. I have clearance, but I'll keep him under control. The doctor's lips thinned. Very well. Stay back while I examine the patient. As Turner entered the room, Rex's growling intensified, his eyes fixed on the doctor with unwavering focus. Inside, Margaret Hayes looked small and fragile against the white hospital sheets, her once vibrant silver hair dull against the pillow. The steady beep of monitors provided an artificial heartbeat to the room. Good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes, Turner said, checking the 4-drip before adjusting something on her medication pump. We're adjusting your medication slightly. This should help stabilize your condition. Ryan noticed a slight tremor in the doctor's hands. Almost imperceptible, but not to someone trained to observe details. Outside, Rex was now standing at attention, his body rigid with alertness. How much longer before she wakes up? Ryan asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Hard to say. Turner replied without meeting his eyes. These cases can be unpredictable. I'm ordering some additional tests. As the doctor left, brushing past Ryan with barely concealed annoyance, Rex's eyes followed him down the hallway, a continuous low growl rumbling from his chest. Later that evening, a young resident with dark curly hair tied back in a practical ponytail entered the room. Her ID badge read, Dr. Olivia Carter. Your dog seems unusually fixated on Dr. Turner, she observed, checking Margaret's vitals with efficient movements. Ryan frowned. Yeah, Rex is highly trained in detection. When he acts like this, it usually means something's wrong. Dr. Carter glanced toward the doorway, then lowered her voice. I've worked here for 2 years and never seen Dr. Turner before last week. She hesitated. Maybe it's nothing, but what? Ryan pressed. Just keep your eyes open, she whispered, and maybe trust your dog's instincts. She straightened up and spoke normally again. Your mother's condition should be improving faster than this. I'll check back tomorrow. After she left, Ryan leaned close to his mother's ear. Mom, I don't know if you can hear me, but something's not right. Rex feels it too. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm going to figure this out. I promise. Rex whined softly, resting his muzzle on the edge of the bed, his intelligent eyes never leaving the door. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with muted conversations as Ryan mechanically spooned lukewarm soup into his mouth. Rex lay at his feet, alert even during this brief respite from their vigil at Margaret's bedside. The German shepherd's ears perked up at the slightest unusual sound, his training never fully switched off. "You barely touched your food," said Detective Liam Rodriguez, Ryan's colleague from the 17th Precinct, sliding into the seat across from him. Liam's perpetually wrinkled shirt and loosened tie contrasted with his sharp, observant eyes. "Any change with your mom?" Ryan pushed the soup away. 3 days, and she's still unresponsive. But that's not the only thing bothering me." He lowered his voice. "Rex has been acting strange around one of the doctors, a guy named Turner." "Strange how?" Liam asked, stealing a packet of crackers from Ryan's tray. "Like he's detected something. The same way he reacted during that JFK bust last month." Ryan's mind flashed back to the airport cargo terminal, where Rex had alerted them to a shipment that had been labeled as pharmaceutical supplies but contained a sophisticated designer drug that had killed 7 people in Manhattan alone. Liam stopped mid-chew. "The one with the fake medical shipments? That was a solid bust, Hayes. Over $10 million in street value. And we never caught the mastermind," Ryan reminded him. "Just the couriers." As they spoke, Rex suddenly sat up, his attention fixed on something, or someone, across the cafeteria. Ryan followed his gaze to see Dr. Turner purchasing coffee, his movements precise and controlled. "That's him," Ryan muttered. "Watch Rex." The German shepherd's posture had changed completely, his body rigid, nostrils flaring. It was his passive alert stance, the one he used when he detected substances he was trained to find. "Damn," Liam whispered. "That's not just dislike. That's a detection response." Ryan nodded grimly. "Last time I saw him like this, we found enough fentanyl analogs to kill half of Queens." Dr. Turner finished paying and turned, momentarily making eye contact with Ryan across the room. Something flickered across the doctor's face, recognition, perhaps, or wariness, before he quickly exited through a side door. "Does he have access to your mother's medication?" Liam asked quietly. The question sent a chill through Ryan's spine. "He's her attending physician. He has access to everything." Back in Margaret's room, Ryan examined his mother's chart, frustration mounting at the medical terminology he couldn't fully understand. His phone buzzed with a text from Liam, running background check on Turner. "We'll call." Dr. Olivia Carter entered, clipboard in hand. Seeing Ryan's troubled expression, she closed the door behind her. "Something wrong, Officer Hayes?" Ryan hesitated, then decided to trust his instincts. "My K-9 partner is trained to detect various substances. He's been alerting on Dr. Turner since day one." Olivia's professional composure faltered slightly. "That's concerning, especially given some irregularities I've noticed." "What irregularities?" Ryan demanded, stepping closer. "Your mother's blood work shows fluctuations that don't match her prescribed medication regimen," she explained, keeping her voice low. "And frankly, she should be improving by now." Rex, who had been lying quietly, suddenly raised his head toward the window. Outside in the parking lot, visible from their third-floor vantage point, Dr. Turner was engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with a man in an expensive suit. The stranger handed Turner something that disappeared quickly into his pocket. "Dr. Carter," Ryan said slowly, "where does the hospital store controlled substances?" "In the pharmacy on the ground floor." "What?" "I need to see if Rex alerts there too." Ryan's jaw clenched. "I think whatever he's detecting on Turner might be connected to the case we broke at JFK last month. Pharmaceuticals being used to smuggle synthetic drugs." Olivia's eyes widened. "You think Dr. Turner is involved in drug trafficking?" "That's a serious accusation, officer." "I know. And if I'm wrong, I'll face the consequences." Ryan checked his weapon discreetly. "But if I'm right, my mother and other patients could be in danger." His phone rang. Liam. Ryan put it on speaker. "Hayes, you need to hear this," Liam's voice crackled through. "There's no Samuel Turner on staff at New York Presbyterian according to their official records. The credentials he's using belong to a doctor who moved to Chicago 3 months ago." Olivia gasped. "That's impossible. He's been writing orders, accessing restricted areas. He's an imposter," Ryan cut in, already moving toward the door with Rex at his heels. "And he's been doing something to my mother. We need to find him now." As they rushed toward the elevator, Ryan caught a glimpse of Turner entering the stairwell at the end of the hall. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Ryan knew his suspicions were confirmed. The doctor, or whoever he really was, took off running, and Ryan sprinted after him, his heart pounding with both fear and determination. Security. Olivia shouted behind him. Code Silver, 4th floor. Rex raced ahead, leading the pursuit of the man who had been slowly poisoning Margaret Hayes for reasons that were about to be uncovered. The hospital stairwell echoed with the metallic clang of emergency doors and the rapid footfalls of Ryan and Rex in pursuit. The German Shepherd bounded down the stairs with practiced agility, while Ryan followed, his service weapon drawn but held low. NYPD. Stop right now, Ryan shouted, his voice reverberating against concrete walls. Turner was surprisingly fast, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He crashed through the 2nd floor door, momentarily disappearing from view. When Ryan and Rex burst through the same door seconds later, they found themselves in a busy corridor of the oncology department. Patients and staff turned in surprise at the commotion. Which way? Ryan demanded of a startled nurse. She pointed shakily toward a service corridor. A man just ran through there. Ryan sprinted in that direction, Rex slightly ahead, tracking the scent with unwavering focus. The service corridor led to a maze of maintenance hallways rarely seen by patients. Dimly lit passages housing electrical panels, ventilation systems, and storage rooms. Officer Hayes. Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the hospital-issued walkie-talkie she'd thrust into his hand before the chase began. Security has locked down all exits. Where are you? Service corridors, 2nd floor, Ryan panted. His response was cut short as Rex suddenly stopped, his body tense with alertness outside a door marked, authorized personnel only. The German Shepherd's training kicked in as he sat rigidly, his signal that he'd found what he was looking for. I've got a location, Ryan whispered into the radio. East Wing, near the maintenance shop. Drawing a deep breath, Ryan tried the door. Locked. He positioned himself to the side and called out, NYPD. Open the door now. Silence. Then a crash from inside. Making a split-second decision, Ryan stepped back and kicked hard near the lock. The door burst open to reveal a small office with monitors showing security camera feeds from throughout the hospital. Papers were scattered across a desk, and an emergency exit door at the back of the room was just swinging closed. He's heading for the loading dock, Ryan transmitted, rushing toward the exit. But something made him pause. The monitors showed multiple angles of Margaret's room, along with several other patients' rooms. On the desk lay hospital ID badges, security access cards, and a tablet displaying patient medical records. Ryan, wait, came Olivia's voice as she caught up, slightly breathless. Security has the loading dock covered. Look at this first. She pointed to the tablet, which showed a list of patient names, all elderly, all admitted with similar symptoms to Margaret's. Notes in the margins indicated medication doses that had been altered, along with what appeared to be a schedule. These aren't standard hospital notations, Olivia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. These are records of deliberate medication tampering. Security guards appeared in the doorway, joined by Detective Rodriguez, who had arrived after Ryan's urgent call from the cafeteria. Turner? Liam asked. Ryan shook his head. He's on the run. But we've got something bigger. He gestured to the improvised surveillance setup. This isn't just about my mother. He's been monitoring multiple patients. Liam pulled on latex gloves and carefully examined the documents on the desk. Patient transfer authorizations, posthumous organ donation consent forms. These have forged signatures. Olivia's face paled as she studied the medication notes. These are designed to induce specific types of organ failure while making it look natural. This is coordinated organ harvesting. There's our connection to the airport case, Ryan said grimly. The drugs weren't just for street sales. They're using pharmaceutical-grade compounds to damage organs in specific ways, probably to make detection difficult. But why target your mother? Liam asked. Before Ryan could answer, his radio crackled. Subject spotted exiting through loading dock. In pursuit northbound on York Avenue. Go, Olivia urged. I'll stay with your mother and alert the chief of medicine. This goes beyond one fake doctor. Ryan and Rex raced through the hospital, taking a service elevator to the ground floor. They emerged into the chilly evening air just in time to see Turner climbing into a black sedan at the end of the block. Stop! Police! Ryan shouted, but the car's tires squealed as it pulled away. A security guard approached, out of breath. "Officer, we got a partial plate." "Radio it in," Ryan instructed, already jogging back toward the hospital entrance. "And get me everything from the security cameras." Back inside, the hospital had transformed into a crime scene. Hospital administrators huddled with security personnel, while uniformed officers secured the fake doctor's improvised office. Ryan found Olivia outside his mother's room, speaking in hushed tones with an older man whose ID badge identified him as Dr. Alan Reeves, Chief of Medicine. "Officer Hayes," Dr. Reeves said, extending his hand with a grave expression. "I cannot express how deeply disturbing this is. We're reviewing all of Margaret's medications and treatment protocols." "How many other patients were targeted?" Ryan asked. "We've identified 7 so far, all admitted within the last month," Olivia replied. "All with similar vague symptoms that would justify keeping them sedated." "And the imposter?" "His real name is Edwin Porter," Liam announced, approaching with a tablet. "Former surgical resident at Johns Hopkins, lost his license 5 years ago for ethical violations. He's been off the radar since." Ryan looked through the window at his mother, still unconscious, but now surrounded by legitimate medical personnel reviewing her care. "This isn't just one rogue doctor," he said quietly. "The surveillance, the airport connection, this is organized. And they'll be coming back to clean up their tracks." As if confirming his fears, Rex suddenly tensed, his attention focused on the hospital room. The shepherd's ears flattened as a pharmacy technician Ryan hadn't seen before approached Margaret's foreline. "Hey," Ryan called sharply. The technician's head snapped up, his eyes widening in recognition before he bolted toward the emergency stairwell. "Not again," Ryan muttered, sprinting after him with Rex leading the way. "Liam, we've got another one." As security alerts blared throughout the building, Ryan realized that uncovering the imposter doctor was just the beginning. Whatever conspiracy they had stumbled upon, it had roots deep within the hospital, and his mother was still in danger. The pharmacy technician, if that's what he really was, proved faster than Turner had been. He had a head start and knew exactly where he was going, disappearing through a service door before Ryan could catch up. Rex strained at his lead, eager to continue the pursuit. "Damn it!" Ryan pounded his fist against the wall, the frustration of another escape burning in his chest. "Officer Hayes," Dr. Reeves approached with 2 security guards. "We're moving your mother to a secure room in the surgical wing. I've personally vetted the staff who will be caring for her." Ryan nodded gratefully, but couldn't shake his unease. "I need to see her medication. All of it." Back at Margaret's room, a team was carefully transferring her to a gurney for relocation. Olivia stood by, watching the 4 bags with hawk-like intensity. As Margaret was wheeled past, Ryan squeezed his mother's hand. "I'm getting to the bottom of this, Mom. I promise." In the new room, with its reinforced door and security camera, Ryan finally allowed himself a moment to think. He dropped heavily into a chair while Rex settled vigilantly at his feet. "We recovered these from the pharmacy," Liam said, entering with a clear evidence bag containing several medication vials. "They match what was being administered to your mother, but the contents have been tampered with." Olivia studied the vials, her brow furrowed. "These appear to contain trace amounts of a compound that would gradually damage kidney function while mimicking natural failure. Why target my mother?" Ryan wondered aloud. "She's 72 with no significant medical history." "It might not be about her specifically," Liam suggested. "The other victims fit a similar profile. Elderly, but basically healthy, few family connections, not likely to have frequent visitors questioning their care." Ryan's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Officer Hayes," came a digitally altered voice. "Your interference is becoming problematic." Ryan signaled Liam to trace the call. "Who is this?" "Someone who appreciates your mother's potential contribution to medical science." The voice was clinical, detached. "Your family history shows excellent organ viability despite age." A cold wave of horror washed over Ryan. "You're harvesting organs. For what? Black market transplants?" "So short-sighted," the voice chided. "What we're developing is far more valuable than individual organs. But that's not your concern. We simply called to offer you a choice." "I'm listening," Ryan replied, stalling for time as Liam worked on the trace. "Back away from this investigation, and your mother will recover fully within 3 days. Continue, and we cannot guarantee her safety or yours." Ryan's knuckles whitened around the phone. You're threatening a police officer. I'm offering you a way out, the voice corrected. You have 1 hour to decide. If we see any indication of heightened security or police presence beyond what's already there, the offer expires. The call ended abruptly. Ryan looked up at Liam, who shook his head. Bounced through too many relays. But it was definitely made from inside the hospital. Ryan's jaw clenched. They're still here, watching us. What are you going to do? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Spring their trap, Ryan replied. He turned to Liam. I need a team ready, but invisible. And I need to know exactly what was in that shipment Rex detected at JFK. Within the hour, Ryan had made a show of angry resignation, loudly arguing with hospital security about removing the extra guards from his mother's floor. After, reluctantly, agreeing to normal security protocols, he retreated to Margaret's room with only Rex and Dr. Carter remaining. Are you sure about this? Olivia asked once they were alone. Using yourself and your mother as bait is incredibly risky. Ryan checked his service weapon and the backup piece strapped to his ankle. They'll try to silence her either way. At least this way, we control the situation. He turned to the window, seemingly deep in thought, but actually scanning the adjacent rooftop where Liam and 2 tactical officers had taken position. 3 more officers were disguised as maintenance workers on the floor, and another 2 as patients in nearby rooms. Your mother's vital signs are improving, Olivia noted, checking the monitors. Whatever they were giving her, the effects are starting to wear off. Ryan moved to his mother's bedside. In the harsh hospital lighting, her face appeared more gaunt than he remembered, the lines around her eyes deeper. But there was color returning to her cheeks. Mom? He whispered, taking her hand. Can you hear me? Margaret's fingers twitched slightly in his grasp. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. She's responding, Olivia said with cautious optimism. This is good. The room's phone rang, making them both jump. Ryan answered, keeping his voice neutral. Hayes. Wise decision, officer, came the same digitally altered voice. Maintain your current posture for the next 12 hours, and your mother will continue to improve. A doctor will visit shortly to adjust her medication. I want my mother transferred to another hospital, Ryan demanded, playing his part. That would be unwise, the voice warned. Her condition requires specialized care that only we can provide. After the call ended, Ryan checked his watch. They'll make their move soon. Remember, we need at least one of them alive and talking. As if on cue, the lights in the corridor outside dimmed. Not completely out, but enough to create shadows. A moment later, a man in a white coat approached the nursing station, his back to Margaret's room. The nurse nodded at whatever he said and handed over what appeared to be a key card. Here we go, Ryan muttered, moving to position himself behind the door while Olivia pretended to check Margaret's vitals. Rex, sensing the tension, stood silently alert by the bedside, his eyes fixed on the door. The handle turned quietly, and the door swung open just wide enough for a man to slip through. But instead of one person, 2 entered, the first in a doctor's coat, the second in scrubs, both wearing surgical masks. Excuse me, Olivia said with convincing surprise. Who authorized you to? The man in scrubs produced a syringe with practiced speed. Step away from the patient, Dr. Carter. This won't take long. NYPD. Don't move, Ryan shouted, stepping from behind the door with his weapon raised. What happened next unfolded in seconds. The first man lunged at Ryan, attempting to knock the gun from his hand. The second advanced on Margaret, syringe still raised. And Rex, responding to years of training, launched himself at the man threatening his handler, clamping powerful jaws around his forearm. The hospital corridor erupted in controlled chaos as Liam's team converged on the room. By the time the fluorescent lights flickered back to full brightness, both intruders were subdued on the floor, zip-tied, and under guard. Ryan holstered his weapon, his heart hammering in his chest. Good boy, Rex, he said, patting the shepherd's head. The dog responded with a low whine, still alert and protective. Liam entered, slightly out of breath. We got 2 more trying to access the service elevator. Looks like they were the extraction team. The man from whom Rex had taken down glared up at Ryan, blood seeping through his sleeve where the dog's teeth had found purchase. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he spat. This is bigger than you can imagine. Ryan crouched down, meeting the man's eyes. Try me. Behind them, A soft voice drew everyone's attention. Ryan. Margaret Hayes had opened her eyes, confusion and fear evident in her gaze. What's happening? Where am I? Ryan moved to his mother's side, taking her hand gently. You're safe now, Mom. That's what's happening. You're finally safe. But as he glanced at the captured intruders and thought about the mysterious voice on the phone, Ryan knew this was far from over. Whatever conspiracy they had uncovered, it had tentacles reaching far beyond this hospital room. The dawn light filtered through the Venetian blinds of Margaret's hospital room, casting striped shadows across the linoleum floor. Ryan sat in the visitor's chair, his eyes heavy from a night of vigilance. Rex lay at his feet, equally exhausted but refusing to relax his guard duty. The German shepherd's ears perked up occasionally at the sound of footsteps in the hallway, only to settle again when they passed by. Margaret slept peacefully now, her breathing steady and unlabored for the first time in days. The color had returned to her cheeks, and according to Dr. Carter, her blood work was showing significant improvement since the counterfeit medications had been removed from her system. You should get some rest, Olivia said softly, entering with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Ryan, who accepted it gratefully. The security detail has the room covered, and we verified everyone on this floor. Ryan took a long sip, welcoming the bitter warmth. 4 suspects in custody, and none of them are talking, not even with plea deals on the table. Professional discipline, came Liam's voice from the doorway. The detective looked as tired as Ryan felt, his usually rumpled appearance now positively disheveled. That kind of loyalty usually means serious organization. Cartel, maybe. Ryan shook his head. This is too sophisticated for standard drug operations. The medication alterations were precise, designed to cause specific types of organ failure without raising immediate alarms. That's medical expertise, not street chemistry. Rex suddenly lifted his head, his attention focusing sharply on something. His nostrils flared as he rose to his feet, moving toward the small medication refrigerator in the corner of the room. What is it, boy? Ryan asked, instantly alert. The German shepherd assumed his detection posture, sitting rigidly, his gaze fixed on the refrigerator door. He's alerting, Ryan said, moving to the small appliance. Same as at the airport, same as with Turner. Olivia frowned. That refrigerator should only contain standard medications. We replaced everything after discovering the tampering. Ryan pulled on a pair of latex gloves and carefully opened the refrigerator. The interior looked normal at first glance, labeled containers of standard medications, each in their proper place. But Rex's behavior intensified, his focus unwavering. There's something here, Ryan muttered, methodically examining each container. When he reached for a vial of insulin at the back of the top shelf, Rex gave a soft whine of confirmation. Liam stepped closer. What is it? Ryan turned the vial over in his hand. Looks normal, but... He examined the lot number printed on the label, then pulled out his phone to check something. This batch number matches one from the JFK seizure. Olivia's eyes widened. How is that possible? We purged all medications after discovering the imposter. Unless someone replaced them again, Ryan said grimly. Or unless this conspiracy reaches deeper into the hospital than we thought. Liam made a quick call, requesting an evidence team and pharmaceutical analysis. Within 30 minutes, the small refrigerator had been thoroughly documented and its contents secured for testing. Officer Hayes, a man in a suit, appeared at the doorway, flashing credentials. Agent Thomas Ramirez, DEA. We need to talk. Ryan exchanged glances with Liam before following the agent to an empty consultation room across the hall. Rex stayed close at his side, eyeing the newcomer warily. I understand your K-9 partner was instrumental in the JFK seizure last month, Ramirez began, his tone businesslike but respectful. That's right, Ryan confirmed. 15 crates labeled as pharmaceutical supplies. Rex alerted on them during a routine check. Ramirez nodded. What you may not know is that we've been tracking similar shipments across the country. The JFK intercept was the first solid evidence we've managed to obtain. This goes beyond New York. Way beyond, Ramirez confirmed, sliding a file across the table. We've documented similar patterns in Boston, Chicago, and San Francisco. Elderly patients admitted with vague symptoms, unexplained deterioration, then either death or miraculous recoveries if the operation gets spooked. Ryan flipped through the file, his stomach clenching at the photographs of victims who hadn't been as fortunate as his mother. Organ harvesting? That was our initial theory, Ramirez acknowledged. But it's more complex. The compounds your dog detected are designed to induce specific types of tissue damage, then regeneration under controlled conditions. For what purpose? Pharmaceutical testing, came Dr. Carter's voice from the doorway. She entered, her expression troubled. I was just briefed by our lab. The substances in that refrigerator are experimental tissue regeneration compounds, not FDA approved, not even close to clinical trials. Ramirez looked surprised but nodded. Dr. Carter has been cleared to join this conversation. She's been helping us identify the chemical signatures. These people are using unwitting patients as test subjects, Olivia continued, her voice tight with controlled anger. Inducing organ damage, then testing regenerative therapies without consent or oversight. Worth billions if it works, Ramirez added. Imagine drugs that could regrow damaged hearts, livers, kidneys. Ryan's jaw clenched. And my mother was just a convenient test subject? Actually, Ramirez said carefully, we think she may have been targeted specifically. Has she mentioned anything about her work before retirement? The question caught Ryan off guard. My mother was an administrative assistant at Columbia University Medical Center for 30 years. Nothing classified or sensitive. She worked in the Department of Experimental Pathology, Olivia interjected, reading from her tablet, and specifically handled documentation for several grant-funded research projects. A memory surfaced in Ryan's mind. She used to joke that she knew where all the bodies were buried in research funding. Ramirez leaned forward. We believe your mother may have unknowingly processed paperwork for early iterations of this research. Legitimate studies that were later taken underground when ethical concerns were raised. Rex, who had been quietly observant, suddenly turned toward the door, his posture alert but not aggressive. A moment later, Margaret Hayes was wheeled into the room by a nurse, looking tired but far more alert than she had been in days. I asked to join you, she said, her voice raspy but determined. I've been listening to the doctor's explanations about what happened to me. Her eyes met Ryan's, and I think I know why they came after me. The room fell silent as Margaret gathered her thoughts. She reached out to Pet Rex, who moved to her side protectively. 3 weeks ago, before I collapsed, I was at JFK waiting for my friend Eleanor to arrive from Florida. She paused, swallowing hard. I saw someone I recognized from my days at Columbia, a researcher whose funding was pulled after ethical violations. Dr. Wendell Phillips. He was supervising the unloading of cargo with medical symbols. Ryan leaned forward. The night of the seizure? Margaret nodded. I didn't think much of it until I saw his picture in the paper the next day, from an old faculty photo. The article mentioned research misconduct, but not his current whereabouts. I made some calls to old colleagues, asking questions. And then you collapsed. Olivia finished quietly. They silenced you before you could connect the dots, Ryan said, the pieces finally falling into place. Ramirez turned to Ryan. We need to search the hospital's pharmaceutical storage. If your dog detected that sample in your mother's refrigerator, there could be more hidden throughout the facility, Ryan finished, already standing. As they moved toward the door, Liam burst in, slightly out of breath. Ryan, we just got the full analysis of that vial. It's not just similar to the JFK seizure, it's identical. And the chemical signature matches samples found in a warehouse near the port. That's our next stop, Ryan said, checking his weapon. Rex and I will lead a sweep of the hospital's pharmaceutical storage first. Then we hit the warehouse. Margaret reached out, catching her son's hand. Be careful, Ryan. These people, they're not just criminals. They believe they're visionaries. That makes them even more dangerous. Ryan squeezed his mother's hand, then motioned to Rex. Let's find what they're hiding. As they exited the consultation room, Rex already leading the way toward the hospital's main pharmacy, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of this conspiracy. Somewhere in this building, hidden among legitimate medications, lay evidence that could expose an operation spanning multiple cities and perhaps save countless lives. The German Shepherd moved with purpose, his training and instincts now focused on a scent he knew represented danger. And Ryan followed, equally determined, grateful that his police K-9 had recognized a threat that human senses would never have detected in time. The hospital's main pharmaceutical storage area resembled a small warehouse. rows of shelving units filled with meticulously labeled medications, climate-controlled cabinets, and a sophisticated inventory system that tracked every pill and vial. As the head pharmacist swiped her access card at the secure entrance, Ryan felt a sense of unease at how easily the conspirators had infiltrated this supposedly secure system. "We conduct daily inventory checks," explained the pharmacist, Dr. Patel, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. But with over 3,000 different medications stocked at any given time, subtle discrepancies could go unnoticed if someone knew what they were doing. Rex moved methodically through the aisles, his training evident in his systematic approach. Ryan kept the lead loose, allowing the shepherd to follow his nose while Liam and Agent Ramirez observed from a respectful distance. Two evidence technicians stood ready with collection kits. "He's got something," Ryan announced as Rex sat abruptly, his attention fixed on a refrigerated cabinet containing various insulin formulations. The dog's behavior was unmistakable, the same alert posture he had demonstrated in Margaret's room. Dr. Patel frowned. "That's strange. Those insulins are among our most closely monitored medications." "Perfect cover," Ramirez noted. "Hide in plain sight within medications that already receive scrutiny, but for different reasons." The evidence technicians carefully removed and bagged several vials, marking each with identification numbers. Rex continued his search, alerting on 2 more locations before they had covered the entire storage area. 17 vials total, Liam summarized as they concluded the search, all with the same subtle manufacturing irregularities as the one from Margaret's room. "Enough to poison dozens of patients," Dr. Patel said quietly, the color draining from her face. Back at the security office, converted into a temporary command center, Ryan studied the hospital floor plan with Ramirez and the head of security. They had identified every patient who had received medications from the contaminated batches and placed them under observation, with security details monitoring each floor. "We've got the hospital locked down as tightly as possible without causing panic," the security chief explained. "All staff are being verified against employment records, and nobody enters a patient room without proper clearance." "What about the warehouse?" Ryan asked Ramirez. "DEA tactical team is preparing for a raid at dawn," the agent replied. "We don't want to move too soon and risk spooking them into destroying evidence." Olivia entered with a concerned expression. "Ryan, you should know. Your mother is insisting on being discharged. Says she wants to recover at home." Ryan's stomach tightened. "That's not safe. These people are still out there, and she's a key witness." "I tried telling her that," Olivia said with a sympathetic smile. She said, and I quote, "I raised a stubborn son. Where do you think he got it from?" Despite the tension, Ryan couldn't help but smile. That sounded exactly like his mother. "I'll talk to her." He found Margaret sitting on the edge of her bed, already dressed in the clothes Liam had brought from her apartment. Rex immediately went to her, resting his head on her knee in a gesture that seemed protective rather than merely affectionate. "I'm not staying another night in this place, Ryan," Margaret said before he could speak. "I've been a prisoner in this bed for days while someone poisoned me. I want my own home, my own things." Ryan sat beside her. "Mom, we still don't know the full extent of this operation. Until we do, you're not safe." Margaret's hand found his, her grip surprisingly strong. "I'm not asking permission, dear. I'm telling you what's happening. Either help me get home, or I'll call a taxi." Ryan recognized the set of her jaw, the same expression she'd worn when informing his teenage self that no, he absolutely could not attend that unsupervised party. Some battles weren't worth fighting. "Fine," he conceded, "but on my terms. We set up a security detail at your apartment, and you follow all safety protocols." 3 hours later, as night settled over the city, Ryan found himself in Margaret's modest Queens apartment, converting her living room into a surveillance outpost. 2 officers were stationed outside the building, with Liam coordinating from a parked vehicle with line of sight to all entrances. "This feels like overkill," Margaret remarked as she settled into her favorite armchair, visibly relieved to be surrounded by her own belongings despite her exhaustion. "It's not," Ryan replied, checking the newly installed security sensors on the windows. Rex patrolled the apartment's perimeter, familiarizing himself with the layout and scents. As midnight approached, Ryan convinced his mother to get some rest. He established himself in the hallway outside her bedroom, with Rex lying alertly at his feet. The The apartment was quiet except for the occasional creak of the old building settling and the distant sounds of the city. Ryan's phone vibrated with a text from Liam. All clear outside. Relief team arrives at 0400. He was about to reply when Rex suddenly lifted his head, ears forward. The German Shepherd rose silently to his feet, his attention fixed on the apartment's front door. Ryan immediately went on alert, drawing his weapon and signaling for Rex to hold position. The door handle moved, almost imperceptibly at first, then with more purpose. Someone was attempting to bypass the lock. Ryan pressed his back against the wall beside the door, raising his radio to his lips. "Possible breach at the front door," he whispered. "Stand by." The lock clicked softly, an expert job with picks rather than a key. As the door began to inch open, Ryan held his position, waiting for the intruder to commit to entry. Rex remained perfectly still, years of training evident in his disciplined restraint despite his obvious tension. A shadow moved through the narrow opening, a figure dressed entirely in black, face obscured by a balaclava. He carried what appeared to be a medical kit in one gloved hand and a silenced pistol in the other. The intruder took 2 silent steps into the apartment before Ryan spoke. "NYPD, don't move." The man froze momentarily, then twisted with surprising speed, raising his weapon. Ryan launched himself forward, tackling the intruder before he could take aim. They crashed into the coffee table, sending Margaret's collection of ceramic figurines shattering across the floor. "Rex, halt!" Ryan commanded sharply as the shepherd prepared to join the struggle. He needed the dog to maintain perimeter security in case there were more intruders. The man fought with professional skill, landing a sharp elbow to Ryan's ribs that momentarily knocked the wind from him. As Ryan's grip loosened, the intruder rolled free, scrambling for his dropped weapon. From the bedroom came Margaret's frightened voice. "Ryan, stay inside. Lock the door," Ryan shouted, diving for the intruder's legs as he reached for the gun. The apartment door burst open again as 2 more black-clad figures entered, weapons drawn. Ryan found himself in an impossible position, caught between multiple threats with his mother vulnerable in the bedroom. "Police, drop your weapons," came Liam's voice from the hallway, accompanied by the sound of running footsteps as the officers stationed outside responded to the commotion. What followed was a chaotic blur of movement and sound. The first intruder managed to grab his weapon, swinging it toward Ryan. Without hesitation, Rex abandoned his stay command, launching himself at the armed man with a ferocious growl. Powerful jaws clamped around the intruder's arm, the force of the impact driving him backward. Gunshots echoed in the confined space as the other intruders exchanged fire with the responding officers. Ryan rolled behind the sofa, drawing his own weapon. "Mom, are you okay?" he shouted over the chaos. "I'm fine," came her shaky reply. "Be careful." The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds, but felt much longer. When it ended, one intruder lay wounded on the floor, another was pinned against the wall by Liam, and the third, the original man, was on the ground with Rex maintaining an unyielding grip on his arm despite his struggles. "Clear," Liam called out after checking the apartment for additional threats. Ryan moved quickly to secure the intruder that Rex had taken down, handcuffing him before commanding the shepherd to release. Blood seeped through the man's sleeve where Rex's teeth had found purchase, but the bite had been controlled, enough to immobilize without causing serious injury. "Good boy," Ryan said quietly, giving Rex a quick pat of appreciation. The German shepherd remained vigilant, his attention fixed on the subdued threat. Margaret emerged cautiously from the bedroom, her face pale but composed. "I take back what I said about this being overkill," she remarked with remarkable steadiness, surveying the destruction of her living room. Ryan opened the medical kit the intruder had been carrying. Inside were several syringes filled with clear liquid, along with vials similar to those they had discovered at the hospital. "Not a rescue attempt," Ramirez observed grimly, arriving at the scene minutes later. They came to silence her permanently. The lead intruder glared up at them, still defiant despite his circumstances. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he spat. "Actually, I think we do," Ryan replied, picking up a fallen ID card that had slipped from the man's pocket during the struggle. It showed hospital credentials with the name Dr. Philip Wendell, the same researcher Margaret had recognized at the airport. "You made a mistake targeting my mother," Ryan told him coldly, and an even bigger one coming after her in my presence. As additional officers secured the scene and paramedics tended to the wounded, Ryan put his arm around Margaret's shoulders. We're moving you to a safe house. No arguments this time. Margaret nodded, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. I knew these people were dangerous, but this... She gestured at the aftermath of violence in her home. They're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, Liam noted, bagging evidence from the intruder's equipment. And they just made a big one. Rex moved to Margaret's side, pressing against her leg in a protective gesture that seemed to comfort her. She reached down to stroke his fur gratefully. Thank you, she whispered to the dog. Both of you. Ryan checked his watch, nearly 3 in the morning. The warehouse raid is scheduled for dawn. With what we've learned tonight, it's more important than ever. Outside, as Margaret was carefully escorted to an unmarked police vehicle, Ryan took a moment to compose himself. The night attack had confirmed his worst fears about the extent and ruthlessness of the conspiracy they were facing, but it had also provided them with valuable new evidence and a high-ranking prisoner who might finally give them answers. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the next phase of their investigation. Whatever awaited them at the warehouse, Ryan felt certain it would be the key to understanding the full scope of the operation that had nearly claimed his mother's life. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone in Brooklyn, maintained by the NYPD for witnesses requiring the highest level of protection. Inside, the furnishings were simple but comfortable, with reinforced doors and windows and a sophisticated security system. 2 officers maintained a constant watch outside, while Ryan and Rex stayed with Margaret in the living room. The first hints of daylight filtered through the blinds as Margaret sipped her tea, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the room. The night's events had taken their toll, etching new lines of fatigue around her eyes. But her voice remained steady as she spoke. I should have made the connection sooner, she said, setting down her cup. Dr. Wendell Phillips was brilliant but troubled. His research on tissue regeneration showed enormous promise, but his methods were questionable. Ryan sat across from her, his own coffee untouched. You mentioned you processed his grant paperwork? Margaret nodded. For nearly 5 years. I handled all the administrative aspects of his funding, budget reports, equipment requisitions, research assistant payroll. Nothing scientific. But you would have seen patterns, Ryan prompted. Expenses, resources. That's just it, Margaret said, leaning forward. About 7 years ago, before his dismissal, I noticed irregularities. Equipment purchased, but never delivered to the main lab. Research assistants on payroll who never seemed to be on campus. And supply requisitions that didn't match the stated goals of his projects. Did you report these discrepancies? To my supervisor, Margaret confirmed. An internal audit was conducted, but Phillips had explanations for everything. Then, 3 months later, he was suddenly dismissed. The official reason was research misconduct, but the details were kept quiet. I always suspected there was more to it. Ryan's phone vibrated with an incoming message from Liam. Warehouse team in position, awaiting final clearance. What happened after Phillips was dismissed? Ryan asked, checking his watch. He disappeared from academic circles. I heard rumors he'd gone into private sector research, but nothing specific. Margaret hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Until I saw him at JFK. The moment I recognized him, he saw me too. The look on his face, Ryan, it wasn't surprise or embarrassment. It was calculation. Rex, who had been lying quietly by Margaret's feet, suddenly raised his head and looked toward the front door moments before a soft knock sounded. Ryan moved his hand to his weapon, then relaxed as Olivia Carter's voice called out the predetermined security phrase. The weather in Chicago is lovely this time of year. Ryan checked through the peephole before opening the door to admit Olivia and Agent Ramirez. Both looked like they hadn't slept, but their expressions were animated with purpose. We got a partial confession from one of last night's attackers, Ramirez announced without preamble. The one your dog took down refused to talk, but the wounded guy is more cooperative, especially after we offered medical care and immunity from the most serious charges. What did he tell you? Ryan asked, guiding them into the living room. Enough to confirm our suspicions, Olivia replied, nodding respectfully to Margaret before continuing. The operation is called Project Restoration. It began as legitimate research into tissue regeneration at Columbia, But when ethical concerns arose about their methods, Phillips took it underground with private funding. What kind of ethical concerns? Margaret asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. Ramirez's face darkened. Human testing without consent. They started with terminal patients, administering experimental compounds without approval or oversight. When they needed more controlled conditions, they began selecting test subjects with specific health profiles. Like my mother, Ryan said grimly. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. They've developed a two-phase system. First, they administer compounds that cause targeted organ damage, subtle enough to mimic natural disease progression. Then, once the organ is sufficiently compromised, they introduce their regenerative formula and monitor the results. Margaret paled. They're using people as laboratory rats. For a potential trillion-dollar breakthrough, Ramirez added. Imagine drugs that could regrow damaged heart tissue after a heart attack or regenerate liver cells in cirrhosis patients. The medical applications would be revolutionary. But at what cost? Olivia countered. These aren't willing participants in a clinical trial. They're victims. Ryan's phone buzzed again. Liam, with a message that sent a chill through him. Warehouse appears recently vacated. Signs of rapid exit. Proceeding with caution. They're clearing out, Ryan said, showing the message to Ramirez. They must have realized their attack team wasn't coming back. Ramirez immediately dialed his tactical team, walking to the corner of the room to issue new instructions. Ryan turned to his mother, whose expression had shifted from concern to determination. Mom, there's something else you're not telling us, isn't there? He asked quietly. Margaret sighed, a lengthy exhale that seemed to deflate her slightly. The night I collapsed. I wasn't just at JFK by coincidence. I've been doing some digging of my own. What kind of digging? After I retired last year, I stayed in touch with some of my former colleagues. I heard rumors about a privately funded research initiative that sounded suspiciously similar to Phillips' work. Then I saw a medical journal article that referenced unpublished research on tissue regeneration. The methodology described, it was too similar to be coincidence. So you started investigating, Ryan finished. Margaret nodded. I used my old contacts to access some records. Nothing classified, just public grant histories and faculty publications. I was trying to piece together where Phillips had gone and who might be funding him now. That's why you were at the airport, Ryan realized. You weren't just meeting a friend. Eleanor is real, Margaret insisted. But yes, I chose that specific flight because I traced a pattern of regular medical shipments arriving on that route. I just wanted to see for myself, maybe take some photos of the cargo for the manifest numbers. And instead, you saw Phillips himself, Ryan said. When he recognized me, I pretended not to see him. I went home, made some calls to former colleagues warning them about what I'd seen. That night, she gestured vaguely. I felt dizzy, then nothing until I woke up in the hospital days later. Ramirez rejoined them, his expression grim. The warehouse team found documentation before it could be destroyed. This goes beyond what we imagined. They've been operating in 5 major cities, with test subjects in dozens of hospitals. The airport seizure was just the tip of the iceberg, Ryan said. There's more, Ramirez continued. According to the files, they were preparing for Phase 3, wider distribution through compromised supply chains at major hospitals nationwide. Olivia sat heavily in a nearby chair. They were about to expand from targeted individuals to mass testing. Rex, who had been quietly observant, suddenly perked up at a sound none of the humans had detected. He moved to the window, his posture alert but not alarmed. A car just parked across the street, Ryan noted, peering carefully through the blinds. Black sedan, government plates. That's our escort, Ramirez explained. We're moving to a federal facility. This case has just been escalated to a national security concern. As they prepared to leave, Margaret touched Ryan's arm. There's one more thing you should know. In the Phillips lab, there was a research assistant named Samuel Turner. Ryan stared at her. The imposter doctor? I don't know if it's the same person. It was years ago, and I only saw him occasionally. But if it is, he was Phillips' protege, completely devoted to their work. We'll run the name, Ramirez promised, already texting the information to his team. Outside, the morning had fully arrived, the streets coming alive with the normal bustle of the city, oblivious to the conspiracy being unraveled in their midst. As the federal agents secured Margaret in the lead vehicle, Ryan took a moment with Rex beside the second car. You saved her life, he told the shepherd, scratching behind the dog's ears. More than once. Rex leaned into his touch, dark eyes watching Ryan with what seemed like understanding. Their partnership had been tested in ways neither could have anticipated, but it had proven its worth beyond measure. As they drove away from the safe house, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing something critical. Phillips and his operation had been exposed, but the imposter doctor, Turner, remained at large, along with unknown numbers of Confederates embedded in medical facilities across the country. Margaret gazed out the window, her face reflected in the glass. They were going to use these compounds on countless unsuspecting patients, she said quietly. All in the name of scientific progress. Not anymore, Ryan assured her. Thanks to you and Rex, we've stopped them. But even as he spoke the words, Ryan knew the battle was far from over. Somewhere in the city, perhaps already planning his escape, Turner was watching his carefully constructed world unravel, and men like that rarely surrendered without a final, desperate stand. The federal safe house resembled a corporate apartment, bland but functional, with reinforced security features disguised as modern design elements. Ryan paced the length of the living room while Rex lay watchfully near Margaret, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and dozed in an armchair. 3 DEA agents maintained a perimeter outside, while Ramirez coordinated the multi-agency investigation from an improvised command center in the dining room. We've got something, Liam announced, entering with a tablet. The warehouse team recovered partial shipping manifests before they were destroyed. Most destinations were heavily redacted, but we identified a pattern. Ryan moved to examine the document on the screen. These are all port facilities. Not just any ports, Ramirez added, joining them. Specialized medical import zones with minimal customs inspection for time-sensitive pharmaceuticals. Perfect cover for their operation, Ryan observed. What about Turner? Facial recognition got a hit from airport security cameras, Liam replied, swiping to a grainy image of the imposter doctor passing through JFK's international terminal. Taken 18 hours ago. He's in the wind. Ryan's jaw tightened. He's the key to all of this. Phillips may have started the operation, but Turner was their inside man at the hospital. There's more, Olivia said, looking up from her laptop. I've been reviewing the files recovered from the warehouse. They reference a processing facility near the port, separate from the warehouse we raided. Something called terminal operations. Terminal could refer to end-stage processing, Ramirez suggested. Or terminal patients, Ryan finished grimly. Where would you hide a medical research facility that nobody's supposed to know about? Liam snapped his fingers. The old Staten Island Marine Hospital. It's been officially closed for renovations for the past 2 years. Perfect cover, restricted access, medical infrastructure already in place, and direct access to the water. Check Port Authority records, Ryan instructed. See if there are any unusual patterns of boat traffic near that facility. While Liam made calls, Ryan knelt beside Rex, giving the shepherd a much-needed water break and checking the pads of his feet for any injuries from the previous night's confrontation. The dog leaned into his touch, tired but still alert. You need rest too, Olivia observed, handing Ryan a coffee. You've been going for nearly 36 hours straight. I'll rest when Turner's in custody, Ryan replied, though he gratefully accepted the caffeine. These people targeted my mother, poisoned hospital patients, and nearly killed all of us last night. They don't get to disappear. Margaret stirred, blinking awake. I know that determined tone, she said, her voice still husky with sleep. You used to sound exactly like that when you were 10 and decided you were going to build a tree house by yourself. Despite the tension, Ryan smiled. I did build it. After you broke your arm falling from the second branch, Margaret reminded him. Sometimes it's wise to wait for backup. We've got it. Liam called from the other room. Harbor Patrol logs show multiple unscheduled nighttime approaches to a supposedly inactive dock near the old Marine Hospital. Small craft, minimal crew, no cargo manifests. Ramirez was already on the phone, requesting satellite imagery and arranging for a tactical team. Ryan studied the maps of the area that Liam had pulled up, noting access points and potential security challenges. The last boat arrival was logged 3 days ago, Liam continued. Nothing since then. They might be shutting down operations after the warehouse raid. Or accelerating them, Ryan countered. If they're evacuating, they'll need to move their research and supplies. That means another shipment, probably tonight. Ramirez ended his call and rejoined them. Thermal imaging from a flyover shows minimal activity in the main building, but there's significant heat signature from what used to be the quarantine ward, consistent with operating laboratory equipment. We can't wait for them to scatter, Ryan insisted. Every hour gives them more time to destroy evidence and disappear. Agreed, Ramirez nodded. But we do this by the book. Full tactical team, proper warrants, coordinated approach. I've got a judge signing the paperwork now, and a team assembling at the harbor command post. Ryan turned to Margaret. Mom, you'll stay here with— No, she interrupted firmly. I was their first target in all this. I want to see it through. It's too dangerous, Ryan protested. I'm not suggesting I join the raid, Margaret clarified. But I want to be at the command post. I might recognize personnel or details that you'd miss. I processed their paperwork for years, remember? Ramirez considered this. She has a point. And the command post will be secure, half a mile from the actual facility. Ryan knew that look in his mother's eyes, the same one she'd worn when informing his college-bound self that yes, she would be driving him to campus on her own terms. Fine, he conceded. But you stay in the command vehicle at all times, with an agent present. As twilight approached, an unlikely assault team assembled at the Staten Island Harbor Police Dock. DEA agents in tactical gear, NYPD officers specializing in building clearance, and Ryan with Rex, the German Shepherd wearing his bulletproof K-9 vest. From the Harbor Command Center, a converted shipping container with communications equipment and surveillance monitors, Ryan studied the thermal imaging of the old Marine Hospital. The main administration building appeared abandoned, but the isolated quarantine wing at the rear of the complex showed signs of activity, moving heat signatures, operational equipment, and what appeared to be a small power generator. Two approaches, Ramirez explained to the assembled team, pointing to a digital map. Alpha Team takes the main entrance, creating a visible distraction. Bravo Team, including Officer Hayes and his K-9, will approach from the rear service entrance, which our intelligence suggests is their main access point for supplies. Margaret sat quietly in the corner, studying personnel photographs recovered from the warehouse files. She suddenly straightened, pointing to one image. That's him, Samuel Turner. Younger in this photo, but definitely him. Ryan examined the picture. Turner stood beside Phillips in a laboratory setting, both wearing Columbia University lab coats. Any others you recognize? Margaret indicated two more faces. These were research assistants in Phillips' lab. This one, she indicated a woman with stern features and prematurely gray hair, was his chief lab technician. Brilliant but cold, Ellen Mercer. She's there, Ramirez confirmed, checking personnel data from their surveillance. Heat signature and partial facial recognition from a window glimpse. The tactical commander checked his watch. Harbor Patrol reports a small craft approaching the facility's dock. Operation launches in 20 minutes. Final equipment check. Ryan knelt beside Rex, performing their pre-operation ritual, checking the dog's protective vest, ensuring his specialized detection equipment was secured, and giving him a moment of focused connection. Find the bad guys, he whispered, the simple phrase that prepared Rex for his search and apprehension duties. The shepherd's posture shifted subtly, his body language transforming from attentive companion to working police K-9. One more thing, Ramirez added, addressing the team. Our priority is securing the facility and arresting the perpetrators, but we must also preserve any research materials and samples. This isn't just about making arrests. We need to understand exactly what they've been developing. As the teams loaded into their transport vessels, unmarked boats with muffled engines, Margaret approached Ryan. Be careful, she said simply, embracing him with surprising strength. And take care of Rex. We'll be fine, Ryan assured her. This is what we're trained for. The approach to the facility was executed in near silence, the boat's engines barely audible above the gentle lapping of the harbor waters. As they neared the abandoned dock, Ryan could make out the dilapidated outline of the Marine Hospital, a once imposing structure that had treated immigrants and sailors for generations before falling into disuse. Thermal confirms 8 heat signatures inside, came the whispered update through their earpieces. Concentrated in the East Wing, lower level. Alpha Team disembarked first, moving toward the main entrance with practiced efficiency. Ryan and the Bravo Team waited, counting down the coordinated timing, before approaching the service entrance at the rear of the complex. The door was new, incongruously modern against the weathered brick of the century-old building. A keycard reader glowed softly in the gathering darkness. The team's tech specialist attached a bypass device, and seconds later, the lock disengaged with a soft click. Ryan and Rex took point, entering a dimly lit corridor that smelled of antiseptic and machinery, not the musty abandonment expected in a derelict building. Rex moved with controlled alertness, his nose working constantly, leading them deeper into the facility. The corridor opened into what had once been a quarantine ward, now converted into a makeshift laboratory. State-of-the-art equipment filled the space: centrifuges, incubators, computer workstations, and what appeared to be small bioreactors. But it was the room beyond that stopped Ryan cold. Through a glass partition, he could see hospital beds, 6 of them, each occupied, with monitoring equipment and 4 drips. The patients appeared unconscious, their chests rising and falling with mechanical regularity. "We've got test subjects," Ryan whispered into his radio. "East Wing, need medical support immediately." From somewhere ahead came the sound of voices, urgent, alarmed. Rex tensed, sensing the change in the situation. "They know we're here," Liam muttered, drawing his weapon. The lights suddenly came on at full brightness, momentarily blinding the team. From a door at the far end of the laboratory emerged a figure Ryan recognized instantly from the photographs. Ellen Mercer, Phillips' chief lab technician, her stern face now tight with fury. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," she snapped, remarkably similar to what the captured intruder had said in Margaret's apartment. "Years of research, breakthroughs that could save millions, by experimenting on unwilling victims." Ryan countered, his weapon trained on her. "By poisoning patients like my mother?" Mercer's eyes narrowed with recognition. "The Hayes woman's son, of course." She glanced at Rex with distaste. "And the dog that detected our compounds. Quite the family reunion." From behind her emerged 2 men in lab coats, their hands carefully visible to avoid provoking the armed officers. But it was the 4th figure that drew Ryan's complete attention. Samuel Turner, the imposter doctor, emerging from what appeared to be a secure storage room. Rex growled, a deep rumble of recognition. "Dr. Turner," Ryan said coldly. "Or should I say, Samuel Turner, research assistant to Dr. Phillips." "Where is he, by the way?" Turner's composed demeanor didn't falter. "Dr. Phillips is securing our research at another location. Your raid was anticipated, though not quite this quickly." His gaze shifted to Rex. "Fascinating that a simple canine could detect our molecular markers. We'll need to adjust the formulation." "You're talking as if you're not about to be arrested for attempted murder, illegal human experimentation, and a dozen other felonies," Liam observed. Turner smiled thinly. "Officer, what you see here may appear concerning without context, but these are all terminal patients who volunteered for experimental treatment when conventional medicine failed them. Save it for your arraignment," Ramirez said, entering with the Alpha team, who quickly moved to secure the other researchers. "Samuel Turner, you're under arrest for violations of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, criminal conspiracy, and attempted murder." As Turner was handcuffed, his composed facade finally cracked. "You're making a catastrophic mistake. Our work would have revolutionized medicine. Regrown damaged hearts, restored failed kidneys. Without oversight, without safety protocols, without consent," Ryan interrupted. "That's not medicine. It's criminal experimentation." Medical teams rushed to evaluate the unconscious patients, while evidence technicians began the painstaking process of documenting the laboratory. "There's no sign of Phillips," Liam reported after the facility had been fully secured. "He's the loose end," Ryan noted, watching as Turner and Mercer were led away, and the one person who knows the full extent of their operation. As the raid concluded and the teams prepared to transport the arrested researchers and rescued patients, Ryan found himself standing in what had been the facility's nerve center, a room filled with computer equipment and research files. On the wall hung a map of the United States, with red pins marking what appeared to be operational sites across the country. "We've stopped them here," Ramirez said, joining him. "But this network is bigger than we thought. Those pins represent at least a dozen facilities." Rex nudged Ryan's hand with his nose, a gesture of connection amid the chaos. Ryan scratched the shepherd's ears absently, his mind already planning the next steps. "One battle at a time," he murmured. "Let's finish this one first." Outside, as they emerged into the cool night air, the harbor stretched before them, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. Somewhere in that vast urban landscape, Phillips remained at large, but his operation had been exposed, his co-conspirators arrested, and his research secured. For tonight, it was enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in dismantling the rest of the network. But for now, Ryan took satisfaction in knowing that his mother was safe, the immediate threat neutralized, and Rex had once again proven his extraordinary value as both partner and protector. The debriefing at the federal building stretched past midnight, a marathon session of evidence cataloging and witness statements. Ryan sat at a conference table littered with coffee cups and half-eaten sandwiches, Rex sleeping heavily at his feet after the exhaustion of the raid. Margaret had been escorted to yet another safe house, this one under federal jurisdiction, while the investigation continued. "Turner's talking," Ramirez announced, entering with a fresh stack of documents. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, but his energy seemed undiminished. Not out of cooperation, but arrogance. "He seems to think once we understand the importance of their research, we'll be reasonable." "Typical God complex," Liam muttered, scrolling through evidence photographs on his tablet. "These researcher types always think they're above the law because they're advancing humanity." Ryan studied the map they had recovered from the facility, now digitized and projected on the wall screen. "Any leads on these other locations?" "We've confirmed 4 operational facilities so far," Ramirez replied. "DEA and FBI are coordinating simultaneous raids within the next 48 hours. But there's still no sign of Phillips." "He's the mastermind," Ryan said, staring at the pattern of locations across the map. "He wouldn't abandon his life's work without a backup plan." Olivia entered with a troubled expression, setting her tablet on the table. "I've been reviewing the patient data recovered from their systems. They weren't just experimenting randomly. They were selecting patients based on highly specific genetic markers." "What kind of markers?" Ryan asked. "Regenerative capacity indicators," she explained. "Some people naturally heal faster than others. These researchers were identifying those with the highest natural regenerative potential, then using them to test their compounds." "Like my mother?" Olivia nodded. "According to their data, Margaret has an unusually robust cellular repair mechanism. When they saw her at the airport and realized who she was, she became the perfect test subject, not just to silence her, but to further their research." A cold wave of anger washed over Ryan. The clinical calculation behind targeting his mother made the crime even more monstrous. "There's something else," Olivia continued. "The Staten Island facility wasn't just a research lab. It was their primary production center. The equipment there was designed for scaling up from experimental batches to commercial quantities. They were preparing to go to market," Ramirez realized. "Under what cover?" "That's where it gets interesting," Olivia replied. "Their files reference a legitimate pharmaceutical company, Meridian Medical Innovations. It's a small but respected firm specializing in regenerative medicine. According to corporate filings, they were recently acquired by a holding company called Restoration Partners." "Phillips Front," Ryan guessed. "Almost certainly," Olivia confirmed. "Meridian has a manufacturing facility in New Jersey and FDA approval for several conventional treatments. It would have been the perfect vehicle to gradually introduce their experimental compounds into legitimate medical channels." Ryan stood abruptly, causing Rex to lift his head in alert response. "We need to check that Meridian facility. Now." "It's the middle of the night," Liam reminded him. "And we need warrants. If Phillips is consolidating his operation, that's where he'd go," Ryan insisted. "A legitimate pharmaceutical company gives him cover, facilities, and distribution channels." Ramirez considered this, then nodded. "I'll wake up the judge. But we do this properly. Full tactical team, proper documentation, everything by the book." "I'm coming with Rex," Ryan stated, not a request but a declaration. "He's the only reliable detector we have for their compounds." 3 hours later, as the first hint of dawn lightened the eastern sky, a convoy of unmarked vehicles approached the Meridian Medical Facility in an industrial park near Perth Amboy. The complex was modern and unremarkable, 3 low buildings surrounded by a chain-link fence with a security gate. A sign at the entrance displayed the company logo alongside the slogan, "Advancing Healing Through Innovation." From the tactical command vehicle, Ryan studied the thermal imaging of the facility. Unlike the abandoned hospital, which had shown minimal activity, this location pulsed with heat signatures, moving figures, operating machinery, and what appeared to be a fully functioning production line. Third shift workers? Liam suggested. Pharmaceutical production often runs 24/7, Olivia noted. But this level of activity at 4 a.m. is unusual. Ramirez frowned at the security feed. The loading dock is active. They're moving something out, multiple pallets. Ryan checked Rex's protective vest one final time. They're clearing out. Phillips is cutting his losses, salvaging what research he can. The tactical plan unfolded quickly. 2 teams would secure the main entrances while a third covered the loading dock. Ryan and Rex would join the main entry team, using the Shepherd's detection abilities to identify any hidden substances. Our top priority is locating and securing Phillips, Ramirez reminded them. Secondary objectives are any research materials or production equipment. Remember, these are scientists, not hardened criminals, but they've proven they'll use violence when cornered. As the teams moved into position, Ryan felt a familiar tension, the focused alertness that preceded action. Rex padded silently beside him, equally attuned to the mission ahead. The breach was textbook perfect, synchronized entry through multiple access points, clear commands, and swift room-clearing procedures. The night shift workers, genuine pharmaceutical employees, as it turned out, were quickly secured and evacuated, many of them confused and frightened by the sudden law enforcement presence. Manufacturing floor clear, came the report through Ryan's earpiece. Administrative offices clear, reported another team. Ryan and Rex moved through the research wing, where multiple laboratories contained equipment similar to what they had found at the Marine Hospital. The facilities were pristine and clearly state-of-the-art, but something felt wrong. "It's too empty," Ryan muttered to Liam, who had joined his search team. "Where are all the research personnel?" Rex suddenly tensed, his nose working rapidly as he moved toward a nondescript door marked equipment storage. His alert posture was unmistakable. "Got something," Ryan reported, drawing his weapon. "East Corridor, room E14. The tactical team converged silently, taking positions around the door. At Ryan's nod, the point officer tried the handle, locked. "Breach it," Ryan ordered. The door gave way with a splintering crack. Inside was not equipment storage, but a hidden stairwell leading down to a sublevel not shown on the building plans. "Watch for traps," Ramirez cautioned through the radio. "They may have prepared for this contingency." Rex took point, descending the stairs with careful alertness. The sublevel opened into a vast space that had clearly been recently active. Computer stations still hummed, centrifuges whirred, and ventilation systems circulated the air. But like the floor above, it was strangely deserted. "They knew we were coming," Liam said, examining an empty workstation. Someone tipped them off. A sudden commotion drew their attention to the far end of the laboratory, shouts and the sound of running feet. Ryan and Rex sprinted toward the noise, emerging into a large storage area where the loading dock team had cornered several figures attempting to flee through a concealed exit. "Freeze! Federal agents!" Ramirez shouted, his weapon trained on the group. In the harsh fluorescent light, Ryan immediately recognized Dr. Wendell Phillips, older than in his faculty photographs, but unmistakable with his distinctive white hair and patrician features. Beside him stood 2 security personnel and a younger researcher clutching a metal briefcase. "Dr. Phillips," Ryan called out, moving forward with Rex at his side. "It's over." Phillips regarded him with clinical detachment, showing neither fear nor concern. "Officer Hayes, your mother was one of our most promising subjects. It's a shame her treatment was interrupted." "Treatment?" Ryan's voice hardened. "You poisoned her to advance your illegal research." "I pioneered regenerative medicine when the mainstream scientific community was too timid to pursue it," Phillips replied with conviction. "Yes, our methods are unorthodox, but the results will transform human health. What's the suffering of a few compared to the millions who will benefit?" "That's not your decision to make," Ramirez countered, moving to secure the group. As the agents approached, one of Phillips' security guards suddenly reached inside his jacket. Ryan shouted a warning, but too late. The man had already thrown something across the floor toward them. A small canister rolled to a stop, instantly releasing a thick cloud of acrid smoke. "Gas!" someone shouted. The tactical team fell back in momentary confusion. Ryan instinctively grabbed Rex, pulling the shepherd away from the expanding cloud. Through watering eyes, he saw Phillips and his group disappearing through the exit door. "They're heading for the loading dock," Ryan radioed, his voice raspy from the irritant. "All units converge." Recovering quickly, Ryan and Rex circled around the smoke cloud through a parallel corridor, emerging onto the loading platform just as Phillips' group was climbing into a waiting van. "Stop, or I'll shoot," Ryan commanded, taking position behind a concrete pillar. The security personnel responded with gunfire, forcing Ryan to duck for cover. Rex crouched beside him, training overriding the natural instinct to pursue. The tactical team poured onto the loading dock from multiple entrances, returning fire in a controlled pattern. The van's driver was hit, slumping over the wheel. In the chaos, Phillips broke from the group, clutching the metal briefcase and sprinting toward a second vehicle parked farther down the dock. "Rex, take him," Ryan commanded, releasing the shepherd. The German shepherd launched forward with explosive speed, a dark blur against the concrete. Phillips heard the approaching canine and turned, his eyes widening in alarm. He swung the briefcase defensively, but Rex was trained for exactly this scenario. The shepherd avoided the wild swing and clamped his jaws around Phillips' arm, the pressure precisely calibrated to immobilize without causing serious injury. The researcher went down with a cry of pain, the briefcase clattering across the concrete. "Good boy, Rex," Ryan called, rushing forward to secure Phillips, who lay on the ground with the shepherd maintaining his hold. "Call off your dog," Phillips demanded, his composure finally shattered. "Not until you're in handcuffs," Ryan replied coldly, signaling for the tactical team to secure the fallen researcher. As the gunfire subsided and the remaining security personnel surrendered, Ryan gave Rex the release command. The shepherd immediately backed off but remained vigilant, his attention fixed on Phillips. "You've destroyed years of work," Phillips said bitterly as he was handcuffed. "Work that could have saved countless lives. You were willing to sacrifice innocent people like my mother," Ryan countered. "That's not science. That's criminal." Ramirez approached, examining the metal briefcase that had been recovered. Inside were vials of clear liquid, external hard drives, and what appeared to be research notebooks. "The core of his research," Ramirez observed. "He wasn't leaving without it." As the scene was secured and the prisoners loaded into transport vehicles, Ryan took a moment to check Rex for injuries. The shepherd appeared unharmed, though the exertion of the chase and apprehension had left him panting heavily. "You did it again," Ryan told him, scratching behind his ears. "Couldn't have caught him without you." The morning sun had fully risen by the time they departed the Meridian facility, illuminating the industrial park with harsh clarity. In the back of a secure transport, Phillips sat in stony silence, his life's work confiscated, his organization dismantled. Ryan's phone vibrated with a message from the safe house. Margaret was awake, recovering well, and asking for updates. He smiled, composing a brief reply. "It's over. Phillips in custody." Rex made the final takedown. "Home soon." As they drove back toward Manhattan, Rex dozed beside him, earned rest after extraordinary service. The case had begun with a hospital bedside vigil and a dog's inexplicable alertness. It had ended with the same partnership bringing down a criminal mastermind who had nearly destroyed countless lives in pursuit of scientific glory. Some would call it justice. Ryan simply called it good police work, with a significant assist from the four-legged partner who had proven, yet again, that his instincts were worth trusting. The conspiracy had been vast, the danger real, but in the end, it had been undone by the simple, incorruptible honesty of a dog who knew something was wrong and refused to stay silent about it. The autumn sun cast a golden glow across Bryant Park as Margaret Hayes sat on a bench, watching children play near the carousel. 2 months had passed since the dramatic raid on the Meridian facility, and while she still tired more easily than before, her doctors confirmed she had made a remarkable recovery. The last traces of the experimental compounds had finally cleared from her system, leaving no permanent damage, a fortunate outcome that many other victims of Project Restoration hadn't shared. "Hot chocolate, extra whipped cream," Ryan said, returning from a nearby vendor with 2 steaming cups. Rex sat attentively at his feet, his brown eyes tracking a squirrel that darted among the fallen leaves. "You remembered," Margaret said with a smile, accepting the cup gratefully. The warmth felt good against her fingers in the crisp October air. "Some things never change," Ryan replied, settling beside her. "You've ordered the same thing since I was a kid." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the flow of people through the park, tourists taking photos, office workers on lunch breaks, nannies with strollers. The ordinary rhythm of city life continued, largely unaware of the conspiracy that had been dismantled within its midst. "I saw in the paper that Phillips was denied bail again," Margaret noted, blowing gently on her chocolate. Ryan nodded. "The judge cited flight risk and the severity of the charges. The trial won't start for months, but the evidence is overwhelming. Turner is cooperating now, hoping for leniency. And the other facilities?" The map showed so many. 13 in total, Ryan confirmed. All raided and shut down. The FBI has identified most of the financial backers, private equity firms, medical technology investors, even a few pharmaceutical companies who thought they were funding legitimate research. Margaret reached down to stroke Rex's fur. The German shepherd leaned into her touch, his vigilance momentarily softened by affection. "It's strange," she said thoughtfully. "Their research actually showed promise. The preliminary findings that the FDA is reviewing indicate their regenerative compounds could eventually lead to treatments for conditions we thought incurable." "That's the tragedy of it," Ryan agreed. "Phillips might have changed medicine for the better if he'd followed proper protocols. Instead, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison for what he did to you and the others." A gentle breeze scattered leaves across the pathway. Margaret pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, her expression turning serious. "I received a call from Columbia yesterday. They want me to help review their research oversight procedures, identify gaps that might have prevented someone like Phillips from going rogue." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Back to work already? Your doctors said to take it easy." "Yes," Margaret interrupted with a knowing smile. "But consulting a few days a week isn't exactly strenuous. After 40 years in academic administration, I know where the cracks in the system are." Before Ryan could respond, a young boy of about 7 approached, his eyes fixed on Rex with undisguised admiration. "Is that a police dog?" he asked, maintaining a respectful distance. Ryan nodded. "This is Rex. He's my partner. Can I pet him?" the boy asked hopefully. "Rex, say hello," Ryan commanded softly. The shepherd's posture immediately relaxed from alert watchfulness to friendly approachability, a transition he had been trained to make on command. The boy cautiously extended his hand, breaking into a delighted grin when Rex gently nuzzled his fingers. "He's amazing," the boy breathed. "My dad says police dogs are heroes too, just like the officers." "Your dad is absolutely right," Margaret told him. "This one saved my life." After the boy reluctantly returned to his waiting mother, Margaret checked her watch. "We should head over. The ceremony starts in an hour." Ryan finished his chocolate and stood, brushing a few stray leaves from his dress uniform. Today was not a regular patrol day. It was something much more significant. At the steps of City Hall, a modest crowd had gathered. Representatives from the NYPD, DEA, and FBI stood alongside city officials and a small group of reporters. At the center of the gathering, Mayor Chen waited behind a podium adorned with the city seal. "Nervous?" Margaret asked as they approached. Ryan smiled. "I'm not the one being honored today." Rex walked perfectly at heel, his special ceremonial collar replacing his usual working harness. Though the shepherd couldn't possibly understand the significance of the occasion, he seemed to sense its importance, carrying himself with dignified alertness. The ceremony began with brief remarks from the various agency representatives, summarizing the case in carefully worded terms that emphasized the successful multi-agency cooperation while avoiding operational details still under seal. When it was Ryan's turn to speak, he kept his comments brief, focusing on the training and capabilities of the K-9 unit rather than his own role in the investigation. Finally, Mayor Chen stepped forward, holding a specially designed medal attached to a blue and gold ribbon. "It is my honor today to present the City of New York's Medal of Exceptional Service to K-9 Officer Rex of the NYPD," the mayor announced. His extraordinary abilities led to the discovery of a criminal conspiracy that threatened public health, the the apprehension of multiple dangerous offenders, and most importantly, saved the lives of numerous citizens, including Margaret Hayes, who is with us today. As cameras flashed, Ryan guided Rex to stand at attention before the mayor. With practiced dignity, the official draped the medal over the shepherd's head. Rex remained perfectly still, as if understanding the solemnity of the moment. The bond between an officer and his K-9 partner represents the finest traditions of the police service, the mayor continued. Officer Hayes and Rex have demonstrated that this partnership, when built on trust and training, can accomplish extraordinary things. After the ceremony concluded and the official photographs were taken, Ryan, Margaret, and Rex found a quiet moment away from the crowd. "He looks quite distinguished with his medal," Margaret observed, adjusting the ribbon slightly on Rex's neck. "Don't let it go to his head," Ryan replied with a smile. "He'd trade it for a tennis ball any day." As if understanding, Rex gave a soft whine, glancing hopefully toward the park across from City Hall, where he often got to play after official functions. "Go on," Margaret encouraged. "I'll meet you at the restaurant for dinner. Carol and Liam are joining us, remember?" Ryan unclipped Rex's ceremonial collar, replacing it with his regular lead. "One quick game, then duty calls. We're back on patrol tomorrow. The 17th Precinct has a new drug shipment they want us to check." As Ryan and Rex jogged toward the park, Margaret watched them go with a mixture of pride and gratitude. The shepherd bounded ahead, still full of energy despite the formality of the past hour, while Ryan followed at an easy pace, the connection between them visible even at a distance. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after what they had experienced. The conspiracy had been exposed, the perpetrators brought to justice, and the victims were recovering. The system had worked, not perfectly, but effectively enough in the end. That evening, as they gathered at Margaret's favorite Italian restaurant, the conversation flowed easily among friends who had been united by extraordinary circumstances. Liam shared news from the precinct, Carol described her latest pathology research, and Ryan recounted Rex's unflappable composure during the medal ceremony. To Rex, Liam proposed, raising his glass. "The best nose in the NYPD. To all of you," Margaret amended, her eyes bright with emotion, "for not giving up when it would have been easier to accept the official explanation." Under the table, Rex lay contentedly at Ryan's feet, occasionally accepting a discreet morsel slipped to him despite official rules about not feeding working dogs at restaurants. The medal had been carefully stored away, a symbol of exceptional service that would hang in Ryan's apartment alongside his own commendations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, new mysteries to solve. The city never slept, and neither did the work of those sworn to protect it. But for tonight, they celebrated not just survival, but the unbreakable bonds between mother and son, between partners, between friends, that had made that survival possible. As the evening drew to a close and they stepped out into the cool autumn night, Rex paused, his attention momentarily caught by something only he could detect. Ryan watched him, ready to respond if the alert signaled anything significant. After a moment, the shepherd relaxed, returning his attention to his handler with what almost seemed like a canine smile. Whatever he had sensed wasn't a threat, just one of the countless scents that filled his world, a world he navigated with instincts humans could only marvel at. "All clear?" Ryan asked quietly. Rex pressed against his leg in affirmation, and together they walked through the city streets toward home, partners in the truest sense, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. If you've watched this far, comment "I watched all the way through," and share your thoughts about this story. And don't forget to check out the next video that appears in the end screen. It's going to be very exciting.